Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Tuesday, the 18th of August, 2015. I missed this yesterday. I wanted to show it to you today, though, before I jump into what's happening with Tropical Depression 4 out in the eastern Atlantic. This is really interesting to me. Always has been. This shows us the profile of the equatorial temperature anomaly. It's kind of like a CAT scan, if you will, of the Pacific Ocean, a slice down from the surface to several hundred meters deep here, 400 plus meters deep. The top is the surface, and then you go further down, and that represents the different depths. And then you have these colors that indicate temperature anomalies. And it's pretty easy to understand that blue is colder than normal, and then these yellows, and especially the reds and dark red to black, is above normal sea surface temperatures and also subsurface temperatures. And this is the very latest snapshot, if you will, clearly showing the El Nino in the Pacific. This would be the eastern Pacific over here, and this would be the western Pacific on this side. And you see we have cold anomalies reaching the surface now in the western Pacific. Normal, neither warmer nor colder than it should be to the east of that, and then of course this very strong El Nino stretching from there towards the coast of South America. But look right here, a little crack in the armor, so to speak. Starting to see a cold anomaly showing up in the eastern Pacific that will probably gradually start to erode this, and I believe this is going to start shrinking over the next several weeks to months. And all of this major hullabaloo that has been made of this incredible El Nino coming on will be unsubstantiated. Yes, we'll still have an El Nino, and it's going to have some pretty interesting effects, some of which may not be very pleasant for some areas. That's a whole other issue to get into later. But when I see this starting to sort of fall apart, and this cold water over here, especially reaching the surface. I mean, look, the entire western side of this is either right where it should be sea surface temperature wise, or as you can see here, we're starting to get a couple of gradations of blue below normal. So you're neutral here, a half a degree to a degree Celsius below normal, and 1 degree to 2 degrees Celsius below normal is the second shade of blue right there. And then you have even colder water lurking at depth. So I thought that was very interesting, and has a lot of implications for the next several weeks, and then of course for next year, which we can talk about next year. But I wanted to show you this. It caught my attention. I watch this at updates about every 10 days or so. So there you have it. Now for the current goings on in the tropics, in the Atlantic Basin, Tropical Depression number 4 out here in the main development region, this area right here between Africa and the Lesser Antilles. This was supposed to be all but shut down this season due to very negative conditions, colder than normal sea surface temperatures through here. That was one aspect of it. Higher than normal pressure at the surface, and then dry air coming off Africa, these Saharan dust intrusions coming out. All of these different things were supposed to sort of make this a very negative region, and yet here we are with Tropical Depression 4. And if we look at the Hurricane Center's forecast track for this over the next several days, lo and behold, it shows it becoming a hurricane right out here where conditions were supposed to be so hostile. And now yesterday I was thinking this wouldn't develop at all. It just seemed to have too much going against it, but it just goes to show that sometimes even when you have obvious signs in your face, one way or the other, either for development or against development in this case, you can be wrong. And it looks like this has overcome those odds so far. It's only a tropical depression, still has a ways to go, but as I'm going to show you, it's got some pretty good things in its favor working for it. So looking at the broader picture, lots of energy over Africa, these tropical waves gathering, and they will move off into the Atlantic. And as I'm going to show you through the analysis, as we're talking about TD4, this may be setting up to be a very busy end of the August time frame and through September. So here's TD4, very decent outflow associated with it. You notice right off the bat that wind is not coming out in one direction across the top of it, taking it and stretching it out like cotton candy. Instead, the air is able to fan out here in a clockwise fashion. A very nice tail on the southwest side of it, not only showing decent outflow, but there's a nice area of inflow coming into this from far to the south here, which is important. I'll show you that in a moment as to why. Now, sea surface temperatures are important. What goes on right at the skin of the ocean, so to speak. And we know we need about 79 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, but it's not just at the surface. That warm water needs to extend deeper into the ocean to give us what we call ocean heat content, or upper ocean heat content, and in this case they call it tropical cyclone heat potential. And the more of that you have, the more warm water there is at depth for a developing system or a hurricane already developed. When it churns up the water, creates the whipped waves and so forth, it's bringing up warmer water. It's not churning up colder water, or what we call upwelling colder water. And the scale over here shows us very nicely the different levels of upper ocean heat content. And instead of getting into the physics of exactly what this means, let's just look at it from a very simplistic point of view, that at the upper end of the scale, you have more ocean heat content, and at the bottom end of the scale, you have less. But pretty much anything that's showing up in this scale, for example, these colors through here, you are starting to see more ocean heat content than just at the skin of the ocean. And that's important because the tropical depression is located in this region right here. And we see on the scale that represents about this area right here. And so it's at the bottom third, but it is there. It's not like it's way up here where the ocean is 80 degrees just barely. This is fairly deep warm water out here, and that's important also with the low pressure area sitting about right in here. And I showed you that satellite picture, and it's got a nice little tail of inflow coming across here. Very moist warm water to the south. Moist warm water, how about that? Very moist conditions and warm water, that's what I meant to say, to the south of the low pressure center. And so all of this really starts to matter. And it's going to be moving in the general direction of even more upper ocean heat content. And that is a big plus in the development of this system. And we can see this. I'm going to zoom in on this satellite picture, scoot it over. So there is my point. Look at that tail right there extending down. This is probably already a tropical storm. So it's feeding off of this very moist atmosphere and all that warm water south of 10 degrees latitude. Let's go back to the map. Look what's sitting down there, south of 10 degrees latitude. Even more ocean heat content starting to get up towards the middle of the scale. So that's really important as this develops and moves on off to the west-northwest with time. Yes, there is some dust out here. You can see that in the visible satellite imagery, and it shows up even better here. And that's going to be an interesting pattern to watch as this tries to blossom and pull in more air as it grows and the pressure drops. Will it start to ingest this dry air and self-destruct, or will it be able to pull in the warmer water-induced moisture to the south to help itself keep going? It's going to be interesting. I mean, so far it's defied what I thought would happen, and that would be that it would kind of fall apart. Get a quick drink of water. Keep on rolling here, lots to cover. So there it is on the sort of the wide shot here in the bigger scheme of things with the Saharan air layer around it. But, you know, to be fair, this is only in the lower third of the Saharan air layer scale. As you can see, it gets even more dramatic to the right of the scale here, and we're only seeing some oranges and reds, and they're fairly well to the north of the system. So, hey, I guess it's all systems go for now anyway. So what does it look like in the model fields? Well, we could go over all different kinds of models. I like to look at the global models. and the GFS is readily available, free of charge, paid for it with our tax dollars, and that's the global forecast system. So I'm going to show you what it depicts here, sort of go through the next 5 days in different layers of the atmosphere. This is 5,000 feet in the atmosphere, or the 850 millibar level. Got to slow down. And it shows us what the map looks like tomorrow morning. So this will be valid Wednesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. And we're looking at vorticity, or spin in the atmosphere. And I like to look for it to be round in nature, not a blob or whatever, like up here. This is not something that you would look for tropical cyclone development. Neither would this. Now, all of these areas represent energy in the atmosphere, but this is more bundled energy, this round look to it. And lo and behold, there it is. So we put a check mark. Okay, it looks good. It looks healthy in the model field at 5,000 feet tomorrow morning. What does it look like 48 hours out? Still moving along. Now, I want to point something out. It's not moving very fast. We don't have a super strong ridge of high pressure sitting up here just driving this system off to the west at 15 to 20 miles per hour plus. It's actually moving a little bit slower than we would normally expect to see this time of year, because the pressures over this part of the Atlantic are a little bit lower than we have seen recently, and that's also helping to warm up the sea surface temperatures down here, by the way. So there it is at 48 hours. At 72 hours, still looks pretty healthy sitting out here, just crossing 40 degrees of longitude. At day 4, moving right along, the ridge starts to increase in intensity out here. And this is another system, much broader in scope, larger in size, more subtropical in nature, trying to develop in the vicinity of Bermuda, that we'll have to watch. Could be some inclement weather for Bermuda over the next few days. And then finally at 120 hours, day 5, here's the system, more than likely going to be Danny, well to the east of the islands. Now let me point something out. This is the point in the forecast, right here, where it's progged to be 100 miles per hour, a Category 2 hurricane, at this position at day 5. Well, that doesn't look very impressive to me in the 850 millibar field. The amount of vorticity or energy on the scale over here is fairly low. You just don't see all these concentric circles of lots and lots of energy representing a Category 2 hurricane. In other words, the GFS does not show me a Category 2 hurricane here. So we'll see if this comes to pass. Moving up in the atmosphere to 500 millibars, a couple things to note. This is the system trying to develop between Cape Hatteras and Bermuda. And then here is what would presumably be Danny, barely reaching the 500 millibar level. In other words, the circulation doesn't show up very nicely in this part of the atmosphere at this particular point in time, 120 hours out. So that leads me to wonder, well, is the model starting to lose it? If so, why? Heck, I mean, this system is showing up better, albeit more broad and loosely organized than this tropical system down here. But it does cause me to wonder what the reason could be. Then at 200 millibars, or what we call the outflow level, well, maybe there's some strong upper level winds blowing across the system. Well, if we look, it's going to be located right in here. And no, the winds are still 5 to 10 knots at most. And it looks like, generally speaking, yeah, there's some stronger winds over in the Caribbean kind of waiting for it, with a very sharp trough stuck right in there, sort of the extension of this larger tropical upper tropospheric trough, as we call it. Very fancy name for shredder in the Atlantic that tears apart hurricanes as they come into that. So if it's located right in here, the upper level winds aren't too bad for it. So we'll see what happens. That's day 5. That's as far as I'm going to go in looking at this. There's no reason to really venture out beyond that at this time frame, especially since the Hurricane Center's forecast goes out to day 5 only. So it'll be something to watch for sure. A few positives going for it, but I tell you, I just have this part of me that's skeptical, especially of all that dry air around. And we'll see. I mean, it's done pretty good so far, defying the odds. Now, what's happening elsewhere? We don't have action just in the Atlantic. We need to be watching this area of investigation, as it's called, Invest 93C, and the C stands for Central Pacific. There's Hawaii. This will probably develop, and it could come up here and turn to the north near Hawaii over the next several days. Definitely need to be watching this closely if you have interest in Hawaii. Farther to the west, as the map loads up here, we have a pair of typhoons in the western Pacific, Goni and Atsani. Hopefully I said those correctly. If we look at the forecast track here, I think I can just click on it. And fortunately for Taiwan, this may turn to the north just east of there. I would like to see it do so earlier in the forecast track period rather than later, to spare Taiwan potential very heavy rainfall as this gets closer. We'll see about that. Over here to the east, we have Atsani, and it is supposed to turn towards the north with time. Pull this down so we can see it better. Maybe turning to the north and east of Japan, which would be great news for them. Maybe both of these do something like that. Wouldn't that be nice? Of course, this could end up in southern Japan. We'll have to see. But an interesting pair of typhoons in the western Pacific, nevertheless. All right, so a lot going on, a lot to keep up with. Probably going to have Tropical Storm Danny here at the 5 p.m. advisory time, and we will track it. Of course, you can keep up with it at hurricanetrack.com. And we do have an app. Hurricane Impact is the name of the app, with these blogs posted in the app for your convenience, and other tools if we have a landfall especially. That's why we call it Hurricane Impact. It mainly focuses on the impact, with news and information to get you to that point if we do have a landfall threat. And that's available for iOS devices as well as Android. Hurricane Impact in the App Store and on Google Play. I'll be posting video blogs to that regularly. So we'll see what happens over the next few days. A lot to cover with it, and we may just be getting started here. It's only August the 18th, and for them to be forecasting a Category 2 in an El Nino season, and it's not even September yet in the deep tropics, well, that's interesting to me, and maybe it is for you too, and we'll see what happens over the next several days with this. All right? Thanks for tuning in. I'm Mark Sudduth. I know this was a long one, but we had a lot to cover, and now you're up to date. Again, I'm Mark Sudduth, hurricanetrack.com, and I'll be back with another video blog for you tomorrow.